My time's in your hands, writes the psalmist in Psalm 31. But what do we do with our hands when there is nothing to do? For those around Jesus, this Sabbath day was just the end. He had died on the cross, his body was laid in the tomb, their hope was ended. Were they in any state to look to the future? Did they discuss the things that he had said and done with any sense of hope, or was it all with a sense of despair? We're often told in John 2:22, for example, after he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said such and such a thing. But what about now? Did they remember them now on this terrible Sabbath day, or was all hope crushed by the horror of the previous 36 hours or so? For them, surely, it seemed like the end. For us, it's a lacuna, a pause, a gap in the story, the next chapter of which we look forward to with great expectation. So what do we do with our hands when there's nothing to do? Well, what did they do? The gospel accounts vary. John's gospel is the easiest. There's no mention of the Saturday. In John 19:42, Jesus is laid in the tomb, and in the next verse, John 21, Mary Magdalene comes to the tomb and the stone has been rolled away. In the gap, there is nothing. In Mark, when the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, bought spices so that they might go and anoint him. They went out after dark on the Saturday evening so that they were ready to go to the tomb early on the Sunday morning. Matthew's gospel doesn't mention the women at all at this point, but he does talk about another group of people who in some ways have more faith than Jesus' disciples, the chief priests and the Pharisees, who go to Pilate, remind him that Jesus had said, "After 3 days I will rise again," and to receive Pilate's permission to set a guard on the tomb. They certainly weren't inactive on that Sabbath day. And in Luke, the women prepare the spices and ointments on the Friday afternoon, and then we're told that on the Sabbath they rested according to the commandment. On the Sabbath, they rested. They were, whether they knew it or not, on the boundary between yesterday and tomorrow, to quote a chapter heading in Alan Lewis's wonderful book on Holy Saturday, Between Cross and Resurrection. They were in a state of doing nothing, for there was nothing to do. I did type what to do when there's nothing to do into Google, and it came up, to my surprise, I suppose, with a huge list of platitudes. Go for a walk, take up a hobby, phone someone up. The one thing that didn't seem to be on any of the lists was just hold yourself in the space. There's nothing you can do, and that's okay. There will come a time for action, but now, at this moment, there's no need to fill the gap. Embrace the inaction. Stay with the grief. There's nothing to do, so do nothing. Generally, we're not good at this, and probably as soon as we leave morning prayer, most of us will be leaping into action one way or another to get things ready for tomorrow. We instinctively want to look ahead because we know what's coming. But would it be possible at some point today to do nothing? To join the women around Jesus who, on the Sabbath, just rested? Can we find a space at some point in the day simply to be, to wait in silence, perhaps to reread the poem for Holy Saturday by Elizabeth Rooney on the sheet, or do nothing, and just for a few moments to reflect on the journey through Holy Week that we've been taking, and on the meaning of this Holy Saturday, the great lacuna. A curiously empty day, as if the world's life had gone underground. The March sun warming dry grass makes pale spring promises, but nothing comes to pass. Anger relaxes into despair as we remember our helplessness, remember him hanging there. We have purchased the spices, but they must wait for tomorrow. We shall keep today for emptiness and sorrow. And a prayer. Christ our God, your love is poured out in death for our sakes. Hold us in your embrace as we wait for Easter's dawn. Comfort us with the promise that no power on earth, not even death itself, can separate us from your love. And strengthen us to wait until you are revealed to us in all your risen glory. Amen.